Do you know how to up your pie making ante? Today I'm going to share my clever techniques so that all your pies are as gorgeous as they are delicious. Blueberry lattice pie, poached pear and cranberry pie, game pie. Plus joining me today is social media star Lauren Coe with one of her techniques for an over-the-top lattice pie. All today on Martha Bakes. Nothing says summer like a blueberry pie. To make it extra special, I often make mine with a lattice top, which not only allows you to take a peek at the colorful filling inside, but it also acts as a vent for steam escape. It may look complicated, this particular lattice, but I'll share my trick for making it as easy as pie. First, the pâte brisée. 3 3/4 cups of all-purpose unbleached flour and 1½ teaspoons of granulated sugar and 1½ teaspoons of salt. So the first thing I do is mix up my dry ingredients by pulsing. That's called pulsing, up and down, up and down. And then you can add your butter, 3 sticks of butter, and the butter has been neatly cut into 1/4-inch cubes. This makes it very easy to get the right texture of pastry by preparing your butter like this. And it's icy, icy cold. The golden rule of pâte brisée is make it cold. Everything, the flour, the butter, the ice water, and then pulse. And then you add 1/2 cup of ice water. And notice how I'm pulsing and adding the iced water sort of on the outside of the feed tube. There. I think we have our pastry. Take it off, and with this much, I'm going to divide it into 3 equal discs of dough. You can use your plastic to pull the pastry together. And if it's a warm day, work as quickly as you can. Do not let this pastry get warm. It will not be the kind of flaky pie crust that you want. So there. Just place them on a baking sheet and put them in the refrigerator for at least an hour. So now for the filling, which is 3 pints of blueberries, the zest of 1 lemon, and also the juice of a lemon. The combination of lemon and blueberry is just spectacular. Very good for you. 1/2 cup of sugar, only 1/2 cup. Can't complain that it's too sweet. 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Cornstarch will be very helpful in thickening the juices that come out of the berries. And a traditional spice is cinnamon for blueberry, but just 1/4 teaspoon though. You can stir this up, and a little sprinkling of salt will also be nice for the filling. And 2 tablespoons of butter. Just cut the butter into little pieces and stir this all together. The butter helps enrich the juices that are being thickened by the cornstarch. It's a whole little method. And this is ready to put into the pie. So now I'm going to roll out 1 disc of the pastry to fit the bottom of the 9-inch glass pie plate. So I think that is a very nice size for the pie plate. If you have difficulty lifting up your crust, the easiest I find is just to roll it on the pin like this and unroll it into your dish. And then don't use your sharp fingernails if you have them. I don't have them, but use the back of your fingers like this to press this into the dish. And then what I do is I put this right back into the fridge and chill it while I'm rolling out the rest of the topping. And now for the lattice top of the pie, just roll your dough into a square approximately 11 inches. And we're going to cut this into strips. Big pie day, you don't have to go to the gym. Get lots of upper body exercise. And you can transfer this piece onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. There. and get that into the fridge while you roll out the third. So here we have our chilled dough, and you cut this into 1-inch strips. There. And save your scraps. You might need them for something else. So you'll cut this piece and your second piece into the 1-inch strips. So now you're going to place this on top of 2. You're going to lift 2. So this is the beginning of your lattice. Then you're going to go under. It's basically basket weaving 101. And the colder your dough is, by the way, the easier it is to weave. So there, now get that right back into the refrigerator, chill it, then you'll put it on top of your pie. So now get your gorgeous blueberry filling into your bottom crust. Now brush the edge of the pastry with egg yolk. This is your glue. It's going to let the lattice adhere right to the top of the pie. Now this, we've trimmed the edges. Just lift this right on top of the entire blueberry pie and press all the way around the edges. And then with a pair of scissors, just trim about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of your pie plate. So now take your fingertips and tuck this under. Just make sure it's really sealed. And then brush with the same egg yolk to give a beautiful, beautiful golden brown color to the lattice. And I'm also going to sprinkle with sanding sugar to give an added crunch to this pie. Now your oven should be preheated to 425 degrees. Put the pie right in and bake for 20 minutes. And then reduce the heat to 375 and continue baking until the filling is bubbling and the crust is evenly browned. 60 to 75 minutes. So this is what the pie looks like when it comes out of the oven. Once you've mastered the technique of weaving pastry dough, feel free to think outside the box by varying the width of the strips. The edges can be ruffled or straight. The choice is yours. The pie is beautiful. Enjoy. We're making now a beautiful poached pear and cranberry pie. It has a pink filling because of the cranberries. I'm coring and peeling ripe but firm pears. Use a little melon bowl scoop to get that seed cavity out of the pear. We first poach the pears for the filling. So for the poaching liquid, add 1 bottle of a nice light white wine, the Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, a cup of water. I'm not going to add all the water, just add water in case the liquid doesn't cover the pears. And 1 cup of sugar. Bring this to a boil with 2 cinnamon sticks, 1 star anise, and 1 vanilla bean. So the sugar's all dissolved. Add your cranberries, 2 cups of cranberries. Ours are frozen, but frozen are just as good as fresh. And add your pears. Carefully, you don't want to bruise them. And I see that the liquid is not completely submerging the pears, so I'll add a little bit more water. There. Now, bring this back to a boil, reduce the heat to a simmer, and cover with a piece of parchment paper. Poaching will take 20 to 30 minutes. Once poached, cool in the liquid, and then make your pie. So I've already rolled out my bottom crust. We're going to make a pie this size, 9 inches in diameter. And I'm going to roll our top crust to a diameter of 13 inches. The pastry has just come out of the refrigerator. Just keep moving it so it doesn't stick to the counter. And we are going to cut out the top crust with a decorative pattern. The cutouts are going to become the decorations around the rim. It's an easy and pretty way to decorate a top crust. So this looks good. Let's plenty big, and I'm just going to press that lightly to make a mark so I can tell how big the top crust is. And then cut maybe 10 of these pretty leaf shapes. And these are your decorations. Now transfer this to a parchment-lined baking sheet and chill for at least 15 minutes until firm. And so the pears and the cranberries have been drained from the poaching liquid. Look at the beautiful color of those pears. Put some of the cranberries in the bottom of the chilled pie crust, and then layer in your pears. This is a covered pie, so it doesn't really matter how the pears go in, but you want to make sure that everyone gets pear and cranberry when you slice the pie. This would be a pretty open face pie or tart too, with these colorful pears. But the surprise when you cut into the pie of this colorful fruit is really exciting. These pears have been very well drained because you don't want the bottom crust to get soggy. This looks good. And then spread your cranberries all over the top. Now the poaching liquid, you can reduce it to a syrup and serve that with the pie, with vanilla ice cream or whipped cream. And now egg wash right around the edge so that the top will adhere well. And then lift your top. I didn't even think about it tearing or falling apart as I lifted it. That's the power of positive thinking. Do not think about it. Just do it. And then press all the way around the edge. Now we're going to use our shears to cut around, leaving about 1/4 of an inch that can be tucked under. Pinch that around, and those leaves will be applied right around the edge. It's so pretty. Now, put a little bit of egg wash on each of the leaves, and these can be put around the edge so they stick. And now glaze all over the pastry. Preheat your oven to 425 degrees. Place the pie on a foil-covered baking sheet. That'll catch any drips. Bake for 20 minutes, and then reduce the heat to 375 and bake this pie for approximately 45 to 60 minutes longer. And now just sprinkle the crust with sanding sugar. Once you do this sugaring on the pie crust, you'll want to do it on almost every pie. It really tastes good. Get that right into the oven. Allow the pie to completely cool before cutting. You should really try this technique to stunning effect on all your pies and tarts. Stuffed with meats like venison, pheasant, and wild boar, game pies were staples at one time on tables across Britain. Marked by family crests and coats of arms, the unique hot water pastry allowed it to be baked into freestanding crusts. Instead of game, I've decided to use a more available combination of chicken and pork and chicken livers. So first we're going to grind the meat. And if you have one of these grinder attachments for your stand mixer, very good. Or you could have a hand grinder, but we want to grind the meat with the coarsest blade possible. And we're grinding 6 ounces of chicken thighs. You can use this plunger to push the meat through. We've already ground the chicken livers and the pork and some fat back. If you don't have a grinder, ask your butcher to grind the meat for you. And don't buy the pre-ground meat that's in the grocery store. You want a coarser grind. And now to this, add 3 caramelized shallots, 1 ounce of fat back. It's the fat right off the pig's back. 3 ounces of chicken livers cut up into cubes. This is coarser than the ground meat. And 8 ounces of pork shoulder, also cut into cubes, and 8 ounces more of chicken thighs. This is very similar to a country pate mix. This kind of meat mix has to be very well seasoned. half a teaspoon of ground coriander, a half a teaspoon of allspice, a tablespoon of thyme leaves, a tablespoon of sage leaves, 2 teaspoons of salt, a half a teaspoon of black pepper, sliced Sicilian pistachios, half a cup, and one last spice, 1/4 of a teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. To top it all off, 2 tablespoons of your best brandy. Now mix this all up and put that right into the refrigerator. So now we're going to make our pastry, and it's a very different pastry from pâte brisée. We need 3/4 of a cup of bread flour and 3 3/4 cup of all-purpose unbleached flour with 1½ teaspoons of salt, 3/4 of a stick of butter, and I've cut that into little 1/4-inch pieces. It doesn't have to be as icy cold as pâte brisée because you're going to be cutting this in by hand. And oh, by the way, we have 3½ ounces of pork lard melted in 1/2 cup of water. Now, as soon as that lard is melted, remove from the heat and pour over your dry ingredients. And stir this all together. We need 2/3 for the bottom and sides of the pan and 1/3 for the top. So once you get this into a large enough round, roll this. This pin is too short, so I'm rolling it over a bigger pin. And roll it right into an 8-inch springform pan. A crack or two will be easily patched. So I'm going to just use my pin to take off the excess. The excess, by the way, can be used for decoration. So just fit this nicely into your pan. So now I have my bottom crust. I'm rolling out my top crust. And before we fill this, we should egg wash the entire inside of the case. You want this case to give structure to the pie so it doesn't collapse upon release. There. All done. Now we can fill this with the meat filling. It smells so good. Get this into a nice flat layer. And now get the top on. We want this to be about the same thickness as the sides, a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And this can be laid right over the top. And just use the same technique of cutting with the rolling pin. And just press with your fingers around the edge. Very nice casing, don't you think? And then you use this same pastry and cut out some decorative objects, some fluted leaves, and continue rolling and cutting leaves until you have the entire edge decorated. So just score the leaves, knife mark right along the center. And now we need to make 2 vent holes. One right in the center, and I'm just using the handle of a wooden spoon there, and one right here. This one actually acts as a vent hole during baking, but it's also the hole in which we're going to pour our gelatin, which fills in any nook or cranny inside the pie. Now this goes right into a 375-degree preheated oven on a baking sheet and bake until the crust is golden and thermometer inserted through the vent reads 160 degrees. That takes 80 minutes. So now the pie has been in the oven for 80 minutes, and we're going to release the spring form. Good. It looks great, and it smells even better. So now, with your egg wash, brush the tops, sides, and this goes right back into the oven for another 15 minutes. We found that if we egg wash prior to this, the pie just got too dark. So now, to make the gelatin that's going to go into this hole right here in the top, 1 package of gelatin, soften it a little bit in 2 tablespoons of cool water. And I have a 1/2 cup of chicken stock heating in this little pot, and this goes right into the stock. We want to dissolve the gelatin completely. And once it is dissolved, use a funnel like this. The pie has been out of the oven for 2 hours. This will gel, and then when you slice the pie, there will be no empty holes. And now the entire pie has to refrigerate overnight at least. This pie gets better after a couple days. I like serving a meat pie like this with Dijon mustard, cornichon. When you're looking for something extra special, make a meat pie. There are pies and there are pies. And today, Lauren Coe is here from Seattle to share the technique for making a lattice-topped pie that has garnered her quite a following on social media. I'm very happy to finally meet you.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
What made you start making pies like this?
It was really just for fun. I was always surrounded by food. We were eating, cooking, baking, but I had never made a pie before. So I had just moved to Seattle, had some extra time on my hands, and had seen some photos of, pretty floral and lattice pies out there. So just gave it a go and tried it out myself.
Well, you're certainly doing beautiful things. So what do you call that particular pie there?
I call this the signature spoke because it's kind of carried out.
So the precision in your lines actually creates some sort of dramatic visual effect. I think of Escher. I think,
sure, I get a lot of those comments.
Vassarelli sometimes when I look at your pies. How do you achieve such precision?
It's actually pretty easy. It's a small arsenal of tools that are just basic household objects like a ruler and a pastry cutter, although I also started with a sharp knife, so you really don't need anything fancy. And the design is just constructed with rolling out the dough, cutting it in strips, and laying it on top of the pie.
Okay, will you show me how to make the signature pie there?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we'll just start by rolling out the dough, and it's key to make sure your surface is well floured so that things aren't sticking. Okay. Otherwise, when you cut into strips, that'll break.
Okay.
And then just make sure you flour your rolling pin as well, of course.
Okay, so you want this rolled into a rectangle?
A rectangle is ideal, so the width should be a little bit longer than the diameter of your dish.
Okay, so now we cut this into strips?
Yeah, so just eyeball it. The width should be about 1/4 inch or a little less.
Okay.
So then to start the design, you'll take your ring mold or your cutter and then stick it in the center just as a reference point.
And this is a sweet cherry pie?
Yes, this is a sweet cherry pie. And then at that point, you're just gently lifting up a strip and laying it straight across with the middle touching the edge of the cutter.
Like that?
Perfect. And then just kind of pat down the edges, make sure it stays. And then you take the next strip and continue with a few degrees of separation, but still maintaining the strip straight. And then you just continue all the way around with the same process.
Oh, this is beautiful.
And it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks complicated, but the execution is very easy. Continue following the same direction all the way around so that there's at least 2 layers if you have enough strips.
So do you glaze it and bake it, or do you just bake it?
I will chill it until it's really cold, so that will help the design stick. And then I will do just a basic egg wash, and then sometimes I'll sprinkle some demerara sugar on there for some texture and added crunch.
Right.
And then I bake it until the filling in the middle is bubbly.
That's excellent. Well, certainly an expert with patterns and weaving. And I'm so happy that you came here all the way from Seattle to show us your technique.
Thank you. It was wonderful baking with you.
Small round tips are ideal for writing messages in script. They can also be used to draw dots or to make a swag pattern. Teardrops are formed by squeezing a small mound and pulling the bead to a point. Hearts are made by piping a teardrop at an angle. Then pipe a second teardrop, blending into the tail of the first one. To form a peak, use an oversized round tip and pipe while swirling the tip, then release as you pull up.